Hi guys, it's me, Crystal, and yes, today we have my March reading wrap up, and March was an interesting month. The very end of it was pretty good, actually. Didn't get a lot of reading done this month, but we're not upset about it. I'm trying to figure out how to pick up these books. So, outside of the ebook that I have in my TBR, these are the physical books that I had on my, these are going to topple on my head, aren't they? These are the physical books that I had on my March TBR. And these are the physical books that I read. Plus, I listened to an audiobook that was not on my TBR. So I'm going to talk about these in the order that I read them, which just so happens to be the reverse order that I have them stacked in. Before I get to that, I'm going to talk about the books that I did not get to. So I did not get to Ruin and Rising by Lee Vertigo. I really wanted to get to this, but I was at the end of the month and oh my gosh, the book I was reading was just like dragging. So I didn't get to this, but I am rolling this over to April. I did not get to Illuminate again. So this is going back on the shelf because I feel like if it stays on my TBR too long, it'll start to stress me out. So I will go ahead and put this in the previous TBR jar. But I do still really want to read this. I want to read everything, but I can't read everything right now. I did not get to the Boundless. I did read a little bit more from where I had left off the last time I was reading it. But yeah, so I didn't get this read, but I'm also rolling this over to April because I'm really in the mood to read the conclusion to this duology. And then, so of course, if I didn't finish Ruin and Rising, I did not get to Six of Crows. I'm actually not going to roll Six of Crows over because I feel like one of the mistakes I made with my March TBR was putting too many of these Grisha first books on my TBR. I think it was stressing me out a little bit. So we don't want to be stressed out. So if for some reason I read everything that's on my April TBR, then I'll go ahead and pick this up. If not, then I will pick this up in May and I will watch the show whenever this book gets read. So it'll be sometime in May, or if I read this at the end of the month, June. I'm not in a hurry. I'm actually pretty patient when it comes to watching TV shows. So I did not DNF anything this month. So the first book I finished is Dearly by Margaret Atwood. This is a collection of poetry, and I described this in my reading journal as being the kind of poetry they like teach you to write like in poetry class in college. And like it's fine. Like there was one in here well, there were two in here because I marked them. There were two in here that I really liked. The one near the beginning, I just absolutely loved it. It was like about her mother, and oh my gosh, I just thought it was so beautiful. And then there was something at the end, I don't remember what it was, but I marked it so I must have liked it. They were fine. They were kind of long actually, but yeah, it was fine. I gave it 3 stars. So the next book I finished is The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. And I really like this, actually. I liked seeing, so the first season of the Netflix show is mostly based on this. And then like they threw some stuff about another character in there named Siri, who is not in this book. But I really liked seeing like the source material for some of the adventures that they translated onto the Netflix screen. I also really liked the stories that they didn't include, and there were a couple that I'm like, oh, I actually would have really liked to see that play out. And this was a lot more whimsical than I was expecting. It was like fairy tales. So I was really surprised, by how like fairy tale like this was, like a lot of these stories, they're like folk tale retellings or fairy tale retellings. So basically how this book is you have like the present day part of the story, which are the chapters that are called The Voice of Reason, and then every single other chapter is like a previous adventure that the Witcher has gone on, and they're in descending order. So each one goes a little bit further back in time, and I actually thought that was really unique and interesting. So the only thing I didn't love about this book were the action scenes, and not the same way like, oh, Crystal doesn't like action scenes. I mean, I don't, but they were just a little jumbled or something, and I'm pretty sure it's the translator who's doing this, but a lot of the moves that Geralt is making when he's fighting people, they kept saying he was pirouetting, and like I'm really into like ballet and like musical theater and the opera and whatever, and so it's like when you say pirouette, like I see a ballerina in my head, and so I'm imagining this monster hunter doing these like ballet moves, and it just didn't seem fitting for a fight scene, even though they do pirouette and fight scenes in ballet, but it's a ballet, like you expect that, you don't expect that and like, like a gritty action scene. And it just kind of made me laugh, but maybe not in a good way. But anyway, no, I really like this. I gave it 4 stars, and I really want to read The Sword of Destiny now, which is that red book back there. So yeah, I want to read at least The Sword of Destiny, and then we'll see if I want to continue on into the main part of the series. But yeah, I really like this. It was a lot of fun, and I didn't have to force myself to read it. But I do have to say, it must have been really difficult to adapt this into a TV show. And so I do have to give like some props to the writers of the show for, I think they did a really good job translating this story, but this is significantly less confusing than the show though. Like I was watching the show, and first of all, I didn't know they were on multiple timelines, and second, I was just a little confused. And so I feel like now I can rewatch season 1 and things will be more clear. I mean, there are a couple of things I liked a little bit better in the show, because whoever the writers are, they clearly have more information about some of the characters than we get in this book. And so they were able to give us like, like proper backstories for like Yennefer, because like in this, you don't really see anything from her point of view, everything's from Geralt's point of view. And so like he can sense certain things about her, but we don't actually get to see it. And so I really like that on the show, we get to like see some of the things that we don't really get to see from Geralt's point of view. But anyway, yeah, I thought this was really fun, and I really liked it. And then the next book I finished is You by Caroline Kepnes. Okay. So this is some kind of weird combination of first and second person, because it's kind of like, I feel like maybe there are like 2 kinds of second person, that there's like, I guess what I would call true second person, where the entire time it's saying you do this and you do that and you see this and you say this and blah, 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 and whatever. And this is like, he's saying, I see you come into the bookstore and, you're acting kind of flirty or whatever. It was a little, it was interesting. It was really interesting. There was only a couple of times when I got confused, because it's like, it feels like a first person book, but like from the point of view of someone who is talking to someone that they're stalking. And so I feel like I'm reading a first person account of someone talking to someone else, if that makes sense. Like I feel like I'm listening to Joe talk to Beck about what he's watching her do. And so the you part of the story didn't really feel like me, it felt like Beck. I mean, it did kind of feel like me at the beginning. It was a little funny, but then after a while, it really just felt like a regular first-person book. But anyway, I thought this was really interesting. I gave it 4 stars. Yeah, so this definitely wasn't as trippy as actual second person, but it was still like really disturbing and creepy. Because we have Joe, and he's like stalking Beck and like trying to weasel his way into her life or whatever. And he's extremely narcissistic, which was hilarious. But we're in Joe's head the entire time, obviously. And he's a little unhinged. And so I feel like the narrative style, on one hand, it worked really well, because like there are a lot of run-on sentences, for example, and that gives you the feeling, that you're in head of someone who's kind of losing it, but it was too much. Okay. So I kind of, at some point while I was reading this book, it's not a short book, it was exhausting, you know, and I kind of wanted a break from these run-on sentences because everything was just like manic, like the whole time. It just made him feel like he was like unhinged and like manic like the entire story. And I guess I just would have liked a break from some of that, so that the times when he's like more obsessive and more in his head and more like unraveling, I just think it would have had like a bigger impact. And so like that was kind of slowing me down after a while because it was just like it was making the story like a little hard to read, but I still was like really engaged and really interested. I mean, obviously, like I said when I put it on my TBR, I've already watched the first 2 seasons of this show, so I knew from reading articles and stuff that they followed pretty closely to the first book, and they did. So it was really interesting for me to see, like, you know, some things that the show changed from the books and some things that were left out, but not much was left out. I do think they made Joe on the Netflix show like a little bit more cute, you know? Like, I don't mean like physically. I mean like his personality on the show, he's a little bit more of this kind of adorable, dorky kind of personality, whereas in the book, this guy is like really, he like he thinks a lot. He thinks very highly of himself, you know? And so from the book, I'm like, I can't tell if he's actually a good looking guy or if he just thinks he's a good looking guy. And oh my gosh, Beck, like they also toned Beck down in the Netflix show because she is significantly more, she has a lot of issues, okay? And I feel like his issues are amplified in the book and they're like kind of toned down in the TV show. And so it kind of made the TV show a little tonally inconsistent in places when Joe starts to find out more about Beck in the TV show, and then all of a sudden we see this other side of Beck, whereas in this book you can kind of see it there the whole time. You can just see it getting worse and worse and like building, and it was just interesting like seeing things that they changed and seeing things that were different. Yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I'm definitely want to read the other 2 books in the series. Because even though I feel like I was getting through this book really slow, I was very engaged with it the whole time. Because even when I was getting close to the end, I wasn't even doing that like, okay, how many pages do I have left? Like, I'm ready for the story to end. Like, no, I was just like very glued to the story and very engaged and just like taking my time with it the whole time. And also reading probably a little bit slower to help me process those run-in sentences. But anyway. So the next book I read is Tomi by Junji Ito, and this is a horror manga about this woman, and I think she's called a succubus. Yeah, she's called a succubus on the back. She's not actually called a succubus anywhere like in the text, but she is called succubus on the back. And so basically men see her and immediately fall in love with her, and then they're immediately like driven to madness over her, and like sometimes they just kind of unravel and ruin their lives. A lot of the times they kill Tomi, and a lot of times the way they kill her is exactly the same. They all feel driven to like chop her up into pieces because they just love her so much they can't stand it. And then sometimes they kill other people, sometimes they kill themselves, but most of the time they're driven to chop Tomi up into little pieces, and every time they do, she regenerates and ruins more lives. I'm gonna try to find some artwork that isn't like gross. Because like the art style, it gets a little bit more sophisticated as we go along, and so like the art style in the front, you know, like it's still good. You know, it looks kind of like this, and I feel like as the story goes, it just gets like a little bit more polished. Again, I'm trying to find something that's not it's not horrifying. So I don't know if you can see the differences from here, but I could tell as I was reading over the course of a few days, because this is a lot. It's a lot of book to get through. But yeah, I thought this was really interesting. I really liked it. it's a little more linear than I was expecting. Like, it starts when she's in high school, and then she's like a young woman, and we don't know what happens to some of the characters. Like, there's a character at the beginning, and he's in like some of the other stories, and then he just like disappears. So I don't know if he eventually died, if he grew old and died, because Tommy is basically immortal. But it is like a pretty linear storyline. So there were a couple of times, you know, when it was like, okay, can somebody like not try to chop her up into pieces? But not all the stories ended the same though. But I just felt like more of the stories did not either ended with her getting, you know, chopped up, or they began with her regenerating after having been chopped up, or left for dead, or something of that nature. But I did think this is really interesting, and I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars again. But I have a couple other books by Junji Ito now that I'm really excited to get to, because as a story, it was really engaging and interesting and disturbing. Okay, the next book I finished was an audiobook, and I saw this for sale for $2.99, and it sounded interesting, and I listened to a sample, and it was just like really creepy and disturbing. And so I decided to get in. I started listening to it right away, and that is Tell Me My Name by Aaron Ruddy. And this is a thriller / suspense novel. So this is about a married couple, and they are kidnapped and tortured by this guy who claims that he knows this woman from her past, and that they're soulmates, and that he wants her to remember him, even though like he's had like some plastic surgery, so his face is completely different, but he feels like they're kindred spirits, and if she digs deep, then like she'll remember who he is, because like whatever, he's crazy. And so the story starts off, it's in 3 parts. And so the first part is he's like, let's play a game. And he's like, I'm going to give you 3 chances to remember my name, and every time you get something wrong, your husband's going to get tortured. And it's really disturbing and creepy and like really engaging. And I gave it 4 stars basically because there are just some things that happen at the very end. They're not bad things. It didn't like drag the plot down for me. It didn't ruin the story for me. It was just like, subjectively speaking, it was just like, it wasn't like my favorite ending. But I thought it was very creepy and entertaining, and I liked it. So the last book I finished this month was The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. This is categorized as sci-fi. I don't really feel like this is sci-fi, but I also don't read a lot of sci-fi, so maybe this is just like a different kind of sci-fi. This read more like literary fiction to me, with like some science fiction elements weaved in. Which is fine. It's just that, okay, so one of the blurbs on the back calls this a razor-sharp psychological thriller. No. And one of them calls it a trippy domestic thriller. I just don't agree with that. Okay. Like I said, this was a very slow moving story. Like, to me, this was more literary fiction, more like character study, relationship study, which is fine, but because I was expecting something more exciting because of the way it's marketed, and you know, the blurbs on the back, the blurb online, it's just marketed like it's a more exciting story than it is. So this is about this woman, and I just finished this book, and what is her name? It's about this woman named Evelyn, and Evelyn finds out that her husband is having an affair with a clone version of her named Martine, and then her husband is murdered. And so you think that this would be really exciting, super exciting, right? No. So basically what happens is, after the husband's murder, you know, they're like dealing with the fallout and like trying to figure out how they can cover it up, because her husband, you know, he has like this job at a university, and so like he can't just like go missing. People will notice. It really, and I read the acknowledgments, and in the acknowledgments, you know, they're like, the author is basically saying, oh, it's kind of like a deep dive into domestic violence and themes. And like I said, that is totally fine if I went into this book expecting that. If I went into this book expecting like a slower paced, like kind of literary kind of book, but I wasn't. So I thought this was a good book. I thought it was interesting at the beginning, and then like after the husband is dead and they're dealing with all of that, the story just like slows down significantly, and it really is just about like relationships and healing and lovely things, but just not what I was expecting and not really what I was in the mood for either. It took me a really long time to read this book, and it is not a long book. It's a shorter book. Like, I don't know if you can tell, it's not as tall as other books. And it's only 250 something pages, so it's definitely not a long book. But I just wasn't motivated to pick it up. There was like no sense of urgency in the story. Like, I kept hoping that like something would happen, like maybe another body would turn up, or something would happen. I don't want to like ruin the book if somebody wants to read it, but it's just like I kept waiting for like somebody to go spastic, for another body to turn up, for just something to happen. And it was really just like watching these characters grow and become maybe slightly better, or I guess less weighed down by their issues kind of versions of themselves, which is fine. It's just not what I was expecting or what I wanted. But I gave it 3 stars. I didn't like it for the most part. It's just like the closer we got to the end, the less I wanted to read it. But then at that point, I'm like, I only have 100 pages left. I might as well just finish it, especially because, like I said, it went by fairly quickly. Yeah. So I read 6 books in March, which, I definitely could have read more books, but ended up being like less happy than normal most of the month. And all I wanted to do was watch TV, so I watched some TV. But I'm never going to complain about reading 6 books in a month. So I'm going to move on to the TBR portion of the video. And so, so basically in March, I decided to not have a random TBR, and so I picked the books myself. And I think that was part of the problem as well, because you get decision paralysis sometimes when you have a lot of unread books. I don't think I picked the right books. At least if the TBR is random, then I feel like, well, I didn't put the books on there, so there's like no pressure. I just feel like maybe there's more pressure on me to actually read the books that are on the TBR when I pick it myself. And so even though I immediately took that pressure off, I don't know. So we're going back to the random TBRs because that's less stressful for me somehow. If that makes any sense. Because then it's like, oh, well, I picked it, so I should be in the mood to read this right now. Whereas when the TBR is random, then I'm like, if I'm not in the mood for it, I'll just read something else. I don't know. It's funny how our mind works sometimes, but anyway, I'm also going to make my TBR a little bit longer. Normally, I make it 10 books long, but we're going to put 12 books on April's TBR, which I think is actually a really good idea. I don't think I should limit myself to just 10 books because I feel like it stresses me out if I feel like I can only put 10 books on my TBR, because like I said, I'm rolling over a couple books, and then I have a couple books that I want to put on the TBR. I'm going to go get my theme jar, and I'm going to pick 3 themes, and then I'm going to get the books that I have already decided to put on the TBR, and I think I'm going to add 8 random books to the TBR, if I'm remembering correctly, but anyway. Okay, I forgot to mention that I had Bone Music on my March TBR, and that was the ebook that I was reading, so of course I forgot about it because I can't see it. And I am still reading that book, so technically I am rolling it over. So technically there's going to be 13 books on my April TBR, but I'm not putting it on the TBR because I'm a little more than halfway through that book. And so I'm assuming I will get it done here shortly. But yeah, I totally forgot to mention that book, which is a thriller. And I thought it was like a supernatural thriller, but it's literally like a regular thriller with some mad science thrown in. And now that I've adjusted to it, kind of digging it. So maybe that would be in my April wrap up, but it's not done now. Also, I just realized I did not pick a favorite book for March. So I don't have that together, but I will get this together. But anyway, my favorite book that I read in March is The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. So I will get that picture printed out and paste it on here and get some notes on here for myself about why it's my favorite read of the month. But yeah, I forgot to mention that. I'm so unorganized right now. But anyway, my April reading journal theme is rain. And this is my title page. This is where I will write my themes down. And then this is my TBR page. And I have the books that are already on the TBR and the additions I'm adding to the TBR. And then these will be my reading wrap-up pages. And then we will put my favorite read of April. And hopefully I remember to do that before I film the video. So I got Illuminate in my previous TBR jar. And so now I'm going to pick some themes. So I'm going to go ahead and pick 3. And I added a theme to the jar. I also added a theme like a month or 2 ago. It was just like a wild card theme in case I'm like, oh, let's pick the wild card theme and just go to the bookshelves and pick a random book. But I don't think that's going to go over well. But anyway, I added a new theme. It's like a signed book theme. And I'm going to do a random number generator. Try and assign the number to all my signed books. But yeah, I'm going to pick 3 themes and 2 books for each theme. Put it on the TBR. Okay. So my first theme is this one that's sticking out. Where do I keep getting this? A book that's been on my shelf forever. I'm going to think about that because that's literally the 3rd time I picked that theme. And I'm kind of like, I really want to get something different. So I think I might put that back in there. So what is this? Rereads. Okay. I want something different. Book 2 or 3 in the series. You know what? I'm going to use this for Ruin and Rising. And you know what? This will fit for Ruin and Rising and the Boundless. So I might need to pick something else. What is this? Only priority books. Okay, I have a list of priority books. I'm going to put this theme back and pick something else. Because it's literally third time I picked that. It's crazy. What is this? A previous TBR book too soon. Pick another one. So, what is this? Anything but fantasy or paranormal. That's fine. Okay, so I'm going to have 4 themes apparently for April since I could definitely use this. So I'm going to get my rereads jar, my only priority books jar, and my anything but fantasy and paranormal books jar. And also my ebook TBR jar and my graphic novel jar. And then we're just I'm gonna pick some random books to put on the TBR. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this all month because, oh my gosh, we don't want to make decisions right now. Okay, so even though I'm still reading the Bone Music, I will finish that book at some point. So I'm gonna pick something out of my ebook jar. This is not mixed up well either. I'm gonna try to reach in there, the bottom, and see what I get. Of course, I pick up 2. What is this? Pretty Dead Girls. What is that? White contemporary? That's fine. I've had that book for a while. Graphic novels. There's not a ton of books in here, but why make a decision if I don't have to? So hopefully I don't pick Uzumaki because the book is really thick and I'm not in the mood for another really thick graphic novel. Oh, this is Death Note. I already read Death Note. This is definitely going to happen. Pick another one. New Mutants Volume 1. Okay. I just realized I just flashed this and you couldn't even see it. You guys, you know what? I got rid of my rereads jar because I only had a few books in there. So I think I'm just going to pick one of the books that I remember. being on my reread jar. And we're just going to go with that. But that's just one book. But I want to do 2 rereads. Okay, what is this? What jar is this? Only priority books. I'm going to start with 2. This is a mess. What is this? Oh, A Curse So Dark and Lonely. Oh. Is that on my priority list? I don't even know. I do want to read that. I feel like I have too many YA books on the TBR, though. That's not good. Okay, so the next one is Heartless. Way too many YA books. I'm feeling like this is not going well. So anything with fantasy or paranormal. I'm going to pick 2 books out, but I'm going to have to do something because I'm going to come up short. What is this? Oh my gosh, why? This is nonfiction. I realize you're not watching me pick things out, but if I cheat, I'll tell you. Les Miserables. This is a graphic novel. I don't actually have Les Miserables. That's a graphic novel. So 2 graphic novels. I'm a hot mess this month. And I don't even think, do I want to read that right now? I'm going to pick one more from the priority reads jar. I'm such a mess right now. It's so fun. What is this? I just read this. This is a Vatican Princess. I think I read, when did I read this? In February? I probably should go through these more often than I'm going through them. Because some of these books are in multiple jars. The Last Wish, I just read that. This is going so well. What is this? The Shadows Between Us. Oh my gosh. Yes. I want to read this. It's another YA book, but I really want to read this. I was listening to some of the audiobook because it was on sale. I didn't get it. But, oh, I really want to read this. Okay. So the first book, I'm going to talk about this on this TBR because I don't have a physical copy of it in front of me. It's Pretty Dead Girls. I don't remember this author. I don't remember what this book is about either. Pretty sure it's a YA thriller. Just based on the title, I want to say, if memory serves me correctly, and I don't think it is, I think it's about this town and like there are dead girls washing up on the shore of a lake or a beach or something, and they're trying to figure out, I think they're all popular girls, and so I think the main character is trying to figure out who was offing all the popular girls before she's next, because she's like a popular girl. I think that's what that book is about. But anyway, I'm not going to hold these books up because the way I have them stacked is definitely going to topple over. So let's just start talking about them. And so the reread I picked is Covenant with the Vampire by Jeanne Calogridis. And I read this book a long time ago. Probably was too young to be reading this book. This book it's about vampires, but I think it goes back and forth between like a diary format and like regular narrative. So this would be like adult paranormal horror. And so basically it's this family, and it's the diaries of the family Dracul right there. Okay, so I think it's about this family, and I want to say their grandfather is a vampire, and he's trying to turn his grandchildren into vampires, and they have to do something horrible to get turned to a vampire. And I remember way too much about this book for the time since I've read it, but I want to reread it because I don't remember everything. I just remember that the main character is married. It's disturbing, but I want to reread this because this is book 1 in a trilogy, and I want to read the other books. I've only read book 1, but I guess I bought them all at the same time. So I want to reread this because what I do remember, I don't think it's enough for me to pick up book 2 and not be completely lost. Plus, I remember thinking that this was really interesting, but it could have been interesting because I was really young and it was really inappropriate. But I don't know. I really want to reread this, so I'm pretty sure this is also on my priority reads list as well. So anyway. And then the next book that's on the TBR is Pompeii, the Living City. This is a nonfiction book about Pompeii. I do want to read this, but I'm like, am I in the mood for this right now? I guess we'll find out. Oh, look. Whoever had this book before me highlighted some stuff. Oh, that's exciting. Wow, they highlighted a lot of stuff. Oh, that'd be fun for me. Okay, so this might take me more than a month to read, but the print isn't too tiny. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's talking about Pompeii and I guess what life was like there, and then, you know, the aftermath and it being destroyed and everything. For some reason, this is something I wanted to read. So one of the graphic novels in this month's TBR is New Mutants. And I've read Mutants before, but this is like the newer New Mutants graphic novels. And so this is volume 1. It's by Jonathan Hickman and Rod Reese. And yeah. I don't know what the storyline is supposed to be about in this book exactly. But yeah. I watched the movie and I thought it was interesting, and so I picked this up and another New Mutants graphic novel because I bought the one that's the Demon Bear saga that was some of the source material for the movie, and then I also wanted to read one of the newer versions of the New Mutant storyline because I'm just curious to read more about the New Mutants. This will definitely get read. It's very short. Very, very short. And then next is Heartless by Marissa Mayer. And this is a YA Alice in Wonderland retelling that's like an origin story for the Queen of Hearts. And so it talks about how the Queen of Hearts became the Queen of Hearts. And so I hear, fingers crossed, that we actually get to see her be evil. And this is not a case of, oh, she's just misunderstood. So fingers crossed. But that's all I know about this. Which I think that's all you need to know about this. This cover is really pretty. And they're doing some kind of fancy thing on the inside flap. And then next I have A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. And I know that this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it sounds really, really good. I wasn't that excited to see it because I know how many YA books are on this TBR, and I know how I am. If I read too many YA books, and everyone starts getting on my nerves, but we'll see how this goes. But if you don't know, it's about this guy, and he's cursed to, like, I don't know. I think he's like, there's like, you bring a maiden to the castle, and he has so many days to get the maiden to fall in love with him, and if they don't, then he turns into a monster and like kills a bunch of people. It sounds really dark and bloody. So I don't know if I'm gonna get to this. It's not as long as it looks, but I don't know. I do want to read this though. Definitely gonna try to get to this. So The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. It just sounds like it's just really fun and dark and a little ridiculous, but like in the best way. And so I really want to read this. It's about this girl, and basically she's just like the worst, and she wants to be queen. And so she wants to seduce the current king and then get him to fall in love with her and marry her so that she can become queen, and then kill him so that she can rule by herself. I think that's her plan, and it sounds like it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's a YA book, so it's probably not going to be as fun as it sounds, but I was listening to the audiobook, and the narrator was just like making me laugh so much. So I'm like, I really wanted to read this. I almost put this on my TBR for April, and I was like, no, I'll do the random book. So the fact that this came up randomly, like, this is a sign I should read this soon, right? Yes. Also, just look at how gorgeous this is. I don't know if you can see it. There's some roses right here, and it's just really pretty. And then the other graphic novel I have on TBR is the manga classics Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. And the way the manga classics work is they take the original text and dialogue and put it in a manga format. So a lot of the like description gets cut out. But this is what her artwork looks like. I have not read Les Miserables. I thought maybe I would read it in this manga format because the actual book, it looks like it's pretty thick. This is gonna be really sad. I'm looking forward to this. And then one of the books I wanted to put in my TBR for April is The One by John Mars. And even though I heard the Netflix show is quite a bit different from the book, I still want to read the book because it's like, the book sounds interesting. My sister recommended it because she thinks that I will like it. And especially if the book is really different from the show, then I definitely want to read the book before watching the show. So, but as far as I know, this book is science fiction, and it's about someone creates some kind of genetic soulmate test, and so you can get your DNA tested and it will give you like your genetic soulmate. And so there's multiple point of views from like different couplings. My sister told me one of the storylines in detail because at first I wasn't thinking I was going to read this book, and also I don't really mind spoilers too much. So yeah, so apparently a lot of people's lives are turned upside down. Some people's matches, a lot of people's matches are not what they were expecting. Some people's matches are psychopaths. So it sounds like it's fun. It should be really fun. And then another book I wanted to put on this month's TBR is this Poison Heart by Kaylin Barron. And this is an arc. This book comes out July 6th. And this is another YA, I want to say contemporary fantasy book. I hear this is a Secret Garden retelling, but basically I just talked about this in a recent video. But anyway, basically the girl has poison ivy power. She has biokinesis and she inherits this poison garden, I want to say from her aunt. And she's like, has this natural affinity for plants and such. And people keep coming to her. They want her to like make concoctions for them. And I think some dangerous people come to her and want some stuff. I probably wouldn't have read this normally. So when I saw that I could get an arc for it, I was like, this will give me a chance to try it when I normally might not would have picked it up. So I don't know how dark this book is going to get. I'm not expecting it to get too dark, but I want to go ahead and read it because when it comes with me and arcs, the sooner I read it, the better. So like if I wait until like June to read it, it's going to be stressing me out every single month I don't read it. So I want to go ahead and get this on the TBR and get this read as soon as I can. But it sounds interesting, but I'm not familiar with this author. Apparently she wrote some book, I want to say it's called Cinderella is Dead, that I've heard really good things about, but I haven't picked it up. And I had no plans of picking it up. But yeah, this sounds interesting. And of course, I'm rolling over Moon and Rising, book 3 in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and The Boundless, which is book 2 to the Beholder duology. And I'm actually reading this first because when I picked this up in March and I was reading a little bit of it, I was like, I do still remember who everybody is and what's going on, so let's capitalize on that before I forget, because I read book 1, I want to say in July, and of course I want to read this so I can get Six of Crows read in May or maybe April, we'll see, and so I can get the show watched. But again, I'm pretty patient when it comes to TV shows. I mean, it's not going anywhere, hopefully, maybe, probably. So those are all the books. Those are all the books on my April TBR. It's a lot, but I think I do well with having a lot of books on my TBR because it gives me a lot of variety, and then there's no pressure on anything because I have a lot of options and I don't have to worry about running out of books to read and then having to think about what am I going to read next, because I have plenty of books to choose from. But this is really YA heavy, so I'm not happy about that. But we'll see. If I get burned down on YA after this month, then that's fine. Then we just won't put those books on the TBR. We'll just put them back in the jar. All right, so I'm going to get my reading journal organized. Get The Last Wish in there as my favorite read for March. I do want to read all of these books. I'm not 100% sure I want to read all of them right now, but that's not a problem at all. So that is all for this video. Yeah, let me know what you're reading, what you're getting into, and I will see you guys on Wednesday. Bye.